right, so a little bit of a backstory with David and Goliath. A lot of you guys are familiar with the story, right? I don't think that many of you guys feel like, oh, what is that? Well, some of you guys might be new to it. And so Israel and Philistine were always at war with each other. If you guys read your scripture, you're going to see that constantly they were at battle. Just kind of like a lot of the countries, a lot of the nations are in battle, today, over and over again. Same thing. That was Israel and the Philistines. And so when it came to this battle that we call David and Goliath, you had the Philistine on one mountain, and on the mountain across was Israel, right? And so the battlefield was going to be right down the middle. And so go with me to 1 Samuel 17. Do you guys know where 1 Samuel is? Is that Old Testament or New Testament? Old. Okay. So when you get there, let me know and say, I'm there. Oh, wow. Man must have prepared you guys. Okay. So so every speaker is going to speak from the same exact scriptures, which is pretty cool. And so the pressure is on me to go first. I'm going to start off with verse number 4. All right, so let's read from there. Then a champion came out of the armies of the Philistines named Goliath from Gath, whose height was 6 cubits and a span. He had a bronze helmet on his head, and he was clothed with scale armor, which weighed 5,000 shekels of bronze. He also had bronze greaves on his legs and bronze javelins slung between his shoulders. The shaft of his spear was like a weaver's beam, and the head of his spear weighed 600 shekels of iron. His shield carrier also walked before him. So that was pretty cool. He had someone that was holding his shield just in front of him. He stood and shouted to the ranks of Israel and said to them, "Why do you come out to draw up in battle array? Am I not a Philistine, and you are servants of Saul? Choose a man for yourselves and let him come down to me. If he is able to fight with me and kill me, then we will become your servants. But if I prevail against him and kill him, then you shall become our servants and serve us." Again, the Philistines said, "I defy the ranks of Israel this day. Give me a man that we may fight together." So going back to this Goliath, and I know some of your Bible versions will say, he was 9.75 feet tall, right? Almost 10 feet tall. Think about this guy being pretty big. The armor that he carried was, weighed 125 pounds, which is heavier than some of you guys. And his spear weighed another 32 pounds. So think about this big giant. So I know the story is David and Goliath, and so a lot of people reference that that's a giant because the man was really tall. So just looking at him, all of Israel was terrified. They were scared. And the scriptures, point to us that they said, "Have you seen this man?" So this went on for 40 days. So keep in mind, he kept coming back out. Everybody kind of went back to sleep in their mountain. And as they came back out in the morning, or I don't know what time, but he did this throughout the day, just taunting them. Like, hey, who's going to pick a fight with me? I'm this big. So how does David come in? David being a shepherd, right? So he's the youngest of 8. He has 7 older brothers, and the 3 oldest brothers were in the army. And so that's how he comes across this. So David, as a shepherd, was one of those, if you guys know some of those people that are just very close to God, that they are close to God, that they, so we know that he played the harp, right? And everything that he did was to honor God. And so he took his job very serious, right? As being a shepherd, he wasn't one of those that was waiting to clock out and I'm out of here. He took it with honor, to the point that he got in a fight with the lion and a bear on different occasions just to defend the flock that his dad put him in charge of. So think about the dedication. Most of us would have been like, I am out. Let them have them. They can make another one. And so King Saul knew David very well. And that's because we know that, in today's time, I guess David would be like in the worship team, right? Because he played the harp. And so what he did is King Saul had an evil spirit that would come and torment him, throughout the times. And he hired David to also play the harp for him because that's what would cause the evil spirit to go away. So think about it. He was a shepherd. He was worship, in the worship team. And so the guy was busy, but King Saul was very familiar with them. His dad, Jesse, asked him to go and take some food for his brothers. Obviously, it had been 40 days. The brothers got a little bit hungry. And so he said, leave the flock right there. Can you go take them some food? So David got a chance to hear that taunting, right? So he got a chance to go up there and hear this that was going on. And everybody was afraid. So think about the way that that this took place. A lot of the battles back then was one-on-one. You represent, this nation. I represent this nation. Let's battle it out. Whoever wins is the winner, right? So at that point, everybody was looking at Goliath and like, yeah, I don't want to die today. Can someone else do it? So this went on for 40 days. So if we go to, let's go on to verse 26. This is once David already got there. Then David spoke to the men who were standing by him, saying, what will be done for the man that kills this Philistine and takes away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should taunt the armies of the living God? So he's like, who is this guy coming up against the army of God? And why aren't you guys fighting him, right? Like, why are you guys letting him speak in such a way and just defy the nation of Israel? But in this case, if you see that, David did not make the same mistake as some of the Israelites did. They were comparing Goliath to themselves. And so they were just looking at him saying, this guy's huge. There's no way I can take him. And I don't feel like dying today. Can someone else do it? David, on the other hand, did not look at it, did not compare himself to the giant. He compared Goliath to God, right? And so when you're comparing to the creator of the universe, Goliath is nothing more than just an insect, right? So a little bit more than an insect. So think about it that way, and that's some of the things that we faced as well. So Goliath, almost 10 feet tall. So think about this. And so David goes to King Saul and offers for himself to go and fight Goliath. Saul tries to stop him, letting him know, hey, you're just a youth. You're too young. This guy has been training since youth. Like, there's no way. You don't have a chance against him. And so David reminded him something that a lot of them had forgotten. And so we read that in verse 37. So we go to verse 37. So David said, the Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and from the paw of the bear, he will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine. And Saul said to David, go, and may the Lord be with you. So finally he said, you know what? It's been 40 days. Go for it. And at least at least put on my armor, right? Because David was not prepared for battle. He didn't have an armor. He was a shepherd. So he put on Saul's armor. It didn't really fit him. It wasn't sized for him. And so he said, you know what? This does not fit me. So he picked up 5 stones, and he already had a sling, and he went on to battle and he said, okay, I'm just going to take him on with this, because God is with me, right? So that's one of the things that they didn't realize is that this is the same God. Like, you guys don't understand. Like, the same God of Abraham and Moses and Daniel is the same God that that is with us right now, and is the same God, that we have, in this point in time. And so sometimes we are the men of Israel, right? So sometimes we do forget that it's the same God that delivered us before and again, and that we're serving the same God, from all of those ancestors. So we go to verse 44. As they drop in the battlefield, Goliath kind of looks at David and says, Are you serious? You guys are sending me this guy? But David was courageous and full of faith. So the Philistine said to David, Come to me, and I will give your flesh to the birds of the sky and beasts of the field. How about that? Then David said to the Philistine, You come to me with a sword, a spear, and a javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have taunted. So imagine that, just what kind of faith this youth had. Goliath was probably caught off guard at that point. He didn't know what to say, but at that point, David also said, This day the Lord will deliver you up into my hands, and I will strike you down and remove your head from you, and I will give the dead bodies of the armies of Philistines this day the birds of the sky and the wild beasts of the earth, that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel. And so at that point, Goliath charged at him. And, I know with a lot of the stories here in the Bible, we there's always like a vision or an image that comes to our mind. So I kind of picture Goliath going like, "Go!" Right? And so David comes and he just grabs a rock, puts it in his sling, and swings it at him, and it sinks in his head. And that's it. The battle, he came down on his knees, he dropped dead, and David didn't have a sword with him. He grabs Goliath's sword, and a pretty heavy sword, and he cut off his head at that point so that everybody would know that he is dead, right? At that point, all of the Philistines started running, and the men of Israel got courage and started chasing after them and went and killed them finally. So that's the story of David and Goliath, and I know a lot of you guys are familiar with it. Some of the things that I wanted to talk about is that although this battle was very physical, David understood that all battles are spiritual, right? And so he understood Ephesians 6:12. So if you guys want to go to Ephesians 6, and is Ephesians in the Old Testament or New Testament? All right, so let me know when you guys are there. You guys are there? All right, perfect. So Ephesians 6:12 says, For we are not fighting against flesh and blood enemies, but against evil rulers and authorities of the unseen world, against mighty powers in the dark world, and against evil spirits in the heavenly places. And so now we know that that the giants that we face, and even Goliath, was not about the flesh. It was something spiritual. There's always a spirit that's behind every giant that we face. And so today's giants may not necessarily look like Goliath and may not necessarily be someone that's after you. But even if there is a spiritual force behind whoever's in front of you. So I know that today's time, a lot of the youth get attacked. Get attacked in so many different ways. And perhaps you don't recognize that you're facing a Goliath, that you're facing a giant. So some of the youth, in today's time, there's an increase in depression, right? Things that just seem, a problem that seems too big for you to handle, that it's never going to go away. That's definitely a giant. Sometimes, some of you may experience anxiety. And something that just keeps coming at you and you don't understand it. That's definitely a giant. Some of you guys may have really good households. And I know I've talked to some of you guys, and you come from really good households. You have a really good life. And maybe some of your biggest fears is moving out, right? And so that might be your giant. But some of you guys probably, come from a place where maybe you want to escape, and maybe coming here is a place for you to escape. And it's good because we are to be encouraging to one another. Some of you may be facing, self-worth, maybe not feeling, good enough for whatever that is. May not be feeling like, you won't you won't be loved. Some of you may be coming from a place where there is problems at home. Maybe some of the things are broken, and that might be a giant that you're facing, right? And so, for me, one of the giants that I face, we face a lot of giants throughout our lives, and for me, it was growing up with lack of affection, lack of love. Growing up with my mom, my dad, neither of them were affectionate, neither one were loving. I grew up in a household where men don't cry, where men almost don't have emotions, right? And so men don't hug, right? And so that was my giant, So I would see a lot of my friends, sometimes I would spend the night at my cousin's place, and I would see their mom hugging them, kissing them, and even to the point that they're like, "Mom, come on, that's too much." And I'm over here thinking like, man, I want that. I wish I received something like that. So to some of you guys, that might seem like that's so silly, right? But that's probably because you are in that household that's loving. So so you never know what someone across you is facing, right? And so one of the people that was a light to me was my grandma. I remember every time I saw her, she always told me how much she loved me. She always gave me a hug, and she always sat me in her lap. And so, even at this age, I still enjoyed sitting in my grandma's lap. And that's because that's something that I wanted. That was a giant that I was facing growing up, is that I didn't feel loved. And my grandma passed away April of this year, so that was a giant that I had to face, and still going through it. But some of the things that we read, they are testimonies, right? So like right now we just read David's testimony with Goliath, and sometimes we just see like, okay, well, Daniel and the lion's den, like how did everything play out? Was it really a lion, or what? Was it, did an angel really come and shut the mouth, or or how did it go? Is it just an interpretation that like, hey, the lion didn't eat me, so God must have sent an angel? Some of the same God that has done all those things is doing the same things, and that's the same God that we're living with in today's time. And so you guys are a living testimony, right? And so you want to be able to live a life of faith, kind of like how David did, and be an encouragement to one another. Because some people, you might be the only Bible that they read, right? And I know you've probably heard that before, that they're just seeing you and like reflecting like, that's being a Christian.
So what did you get out of tonight's message?
Well, what I understood from the message was like that every day we face our own giants and we have to like face them through God.
This is Mariah. All right, what did you take away from tonight's message, young lady?
That no matter what giant is in your way, you can always overcome it with God. Hi. Hi. I don't know what I'm supposed to do here. Bye.
Tonight's speaker was a little different. He was a little weird, you were saying, and you said he was kind of cute.
Yeah, he is kind of cute. I don't know.
Okay, but it was hard to probably pay attention to his message because you were lost in his eyes.
Yeah, I was.
Okay, did you learn anything from him?
I did, actually. I learned that
God is the same God of David and Moses.
All of the above.
All of the above. Yeah, he makes me this nervous.
All right, so youth here. Tell me what you got out of tonight's message.
Well, I took notes and they're in there, but basically, I kind of just got that you just have to put it like in God's hands. He already won the war, so you just have to like let him fight through you to win the battle.
God is stronger than anything on this earth, and no matter what, he'll be our hero.
I had a lot of favorite parts, but I think one that I took away was how the other Israelites, like, they compared themselves to Goliath, while David compared God to Goliath, and I think we really need to, like, let God take over our giants.